What's up, poker people? My name's Wes, and this is my poker vlog. Today we're going to be playing a 5-5 no limit hold'em cash game session with no max on the buy-in. I'm going to be buying into the game for $3,000. Wish me luck. Just before this, I was playing in a 1-3 game. I had bought in for $1,000. I added on $2,000 when I came to this table, and I currently have about $2,400 in front of me when this hand starts. Look down at two black sixes. Definitely going to want to see a flop. The players in front of me just limp in, so I decided just to go ahead and call. Maybe we can just get to a flop. Sure enough, we're going to go multi-way to the flop, trying to flop a set. Bango bango on the flop. We flop a set of sixes on a pretty dry board. Sure, there are some straight draws, but at least we don't have a flush draw to worry about. Small blind bets 50, big blind calls. What do we want to do when it gets to us? If we raise, what does it look like we have? I kind of feel like it looks like we have a set, so maybe I should just call. I would definitely raise if this board had two clubs on it, but I think I'm just going to call. Let's go to the turn. Maybe we can start building a pot on the turn. 3 ways to the turn. Now the board's starting to get pretty scary. We're going to have to decide if this is the spot to raise, or if we're going to continue to just slow play. Small blind bets 100. When it gets to us, do we want to raise this turn card? We definitely want to charge any straight draws to try to get there, but we don't want to build a huge pot if anyone already has a straight. It's unlikely that somebody has a set bigger than ours, but that's also a possibility. Now the big blind raises to 275. That's actually something we were considering doing. I would have made it a little bit bigger. I guess now I'm just going to call and see the river. It's back over to the small blind to decide what to do. I don't think this guy is ever folding, but I am surprised when he ends up raising to $800. What does this guy have? There were 3 straight draws on the flop. For him to have a straight, he needs to have 8-9, 8-5, or 3-5. Both 8-9 and 5-8 are gut shots, and this guy let out on the flop into many players. Seems very unlikely that he would have either of those hands. I did miss during this hand that 3-5 was an open-ender, and I really wasn't even considering that hand for either player. I'm considering what I'm going to do, and before I know it, the big blind shoves for $1,800. I was so sure I had the best hand that this play really shocked me. I went in the tank for over a minute deciding what to do. The good news is, when he shoved for $1,800, the small blind looked dejected. He was not happy that this just happened. The small blind's raise to 800 had me convinced that he thought he had the best hand. Now he looks like he's very disappointed, so he definitely wasn't bluffing, but what did he raise with that now he thinks he's gonna fold? If he has a straight, I think he would just go with it. I'm really confused at what's going on in this hand. I had a really hard time narrowing either player's range down, which led me to leaving in many of the 2-pair combinations that probably should have been excluded at this point, and pocket sevens is a turn set that beats me. In the end, I just didn't know what I was supposed to think these guys had. I did end up making the call, and sure enough, the small blind folded. So now we have a $4,600 pot. The other player asked if I want to run it twice, but I always just rip it, so I tell him once only. Clearly pairing the board should be good for us, but I'm not really sure what river card I think I need. King of Spades comes out, and he shows 3-5 for a straight. On the turn, I was focused so much on how someone could have a straight that included the 10 that I just completely missed the 3-5 open-ender, and he got paid off. Much to everyone's surprise, the small blind said he had 3-5 and folded. He folded the same straight. After instantly losing $2,000, I decided to add on $2,000 so that I could maintain a big stack. I'm now building some momentum in this game and building a stack. I'm moving my way towards being unstuck, but I'm actually still down quite a bit at this point. In this hand, I am the under the gun straddle for $10. We have a call and a raise to 40 with a call of 40. It gets to us, and we see ace-king offsuit in the straddle with a raise and 2 calls. This is a great spot to put a big, chunky raise in. I make it 260 to go. We get a quick fold from the player on my left, and it's back around to the pre-flop original raiser. He spends a lot of time contemplating his options, and he ends up calling. It folds around to the big blind, and to my surprise, he calls too. Now we've got a real pot. There's $835 in the pot pre-flop. We're gonna need to hit an ace or a king. Boom, right in the window, we hit an ace. This is a pretty good board. Pretty much any ace is gonna continue on this board after we see bet. If the pre-flop raiser had ace queen, ace jack, he's gonna continue. He may even call a bet if he has something like pocket kings or pocket queens, knowing that I don't always have an ace. So I bet $350 and I get heads up with the pre-flop raiser. The turn is a queen, which in my opinion is a pretty bad card for us. We now lose to ace queen as well as pocket queens, which I said might actually peel one bet on an ace high flop. I go ahead and decide to go into check call mode, and I'm pretty much just gonna have to check call whatever this guy bets. He can have a worse ace still, he can also have some hands that we beat, and he can definitely have some bluffs. So he bets $500. I'm just gonna have to call this bet. We might still have the best hand, and maybe we can hit a king on the river if he does have ace queen. I go ahead and call 500. I'll be checking the river almost every time. I guess if it comes a king, I'll probably lead into him, and I'd probably make a pretty big bet. Let's see what the river is. The river's a 4, which can in no way improve his hand. If he has ace queen or pocket queens, he's just gonna win this hand. We're gonna check, we're gonna call, and he's either gonna have ace queen or pocket queens or some other ace or a bluff. He ends up going all in for $1,700 and I snap call, and he shows pocket threes. He has a straight. He hits a gutter to win a $6,000 pot. Let's take a look at this hand from his perspective. He calls the re-raise pre-flop and flops a gut shot. He decides to peel one time, misses his gutter, but then I check to him. I believe he saw an opportunity to try to take the pot away, bet 500, and then I called, and then he just binks his gutter on the river. I don't really think the guy played the hand that bad. It's just an insane hand, and I did not expect him to have pocket threes. After distributing my chips around the table, I find myself adding on another $2,000. Now I'm into the game for $7K total. This hand starts with the under the gun raise of $25. I call $25 with ace-6 suited. The player on my left raises to $125. And the cutoff calls. I don't really love the ace-6 through ace-9 hands, but you'll see me play them from time to time, and some of them have been on the stream and will be on this episode. Basically, you're only trying to make an ace-high flush with these hands. Once the under the gun player calls, I'm definitely going to call, and I'm mostly just trying to make a flush. So we go 4 ways to the flop, and let's just see if I can identify all the possible hands my opponent can have this time. Wow, that is a huge flop for my hand. Open-ended with the nut flush draw. This is the kind of hand I'm definitely going to be check raising, trying to get as much money in as fast as possible. The pre-flop raiser bets 300. It's pretty likely that he has an overpair in this scenario. He might just have an ace-king type hand, but at this point I'm going to assume that he has a pretty decent sized pair. With 2 other players left in the hand, this could get pretty interesting. I'm waiting on the cutoff to see what he does, and he ends up folding. The action is now on the under the gun player, and he folds. Let's listen in to what happens next.
You decided between jamming or folding?
Yeah.
I promise you I will call if you jam. You have my word.
All right, I'm on.
I call.
Good luck.
Yeah, brick. You got it right?
Yeah.
Nice hand. Nice hand. There you go, man.
Alright, we finally won a hand. Let's jump into playing another suited ace that I claim to not like playing. We have ace-9 suited in this hand. There's an under the gun raise, and we're in the big blind, and we end up calling with ace 9 of hearts. We flop an ace on an ace 2-3 board and check. This is one of the reasons why I don't like this type of hand. It's not strong enough to know that we have the best hand, and on a board like this, there are worse aces that beat us or at least have pretty good equity against us. We all check around to the button, who bets 100. In this hand, at this moment, I decided the best way to play this hand was to check raise. I didn't want to call down 3 streets with ace 9. I wanted to be the aggressor and simply see if I can increase my hand's equity by being aggressive. So I check raise to 300, and the action moves to the under the gun player, who seems to have a hard time deciding what to do. The reason this raise is good for us, we put other aces in an awkward spot. If he has ace 10, ace jack, he's not really sure what to do. We also are okay if he folds hands like ace 6 and ace 7, because we're not going to get a ton of value from those hands anyway. He does make the call, and we're going to need a good turn card. Well, that's not the card I was hoping for. The 7 just makes one more weak ace hand that now beats us. It's not what I would consider a good card, but I'm not really sure I just want to check this hand down. I decide to make a bet, and I bet 500. The action's back to the button, who again is in a tough spot if he just has an ace and has to decide what to do. He ends up folding and we win the hand. After the hand was over, the under the gun player really wanted to see what I had, and I ended up showing him, and he said he folded ace deuce on that flop. So the check raise definitely worked out for us. Let's build on this momentum. I want to have a stack all the way up to my chin, and hopefully these pocket aces can help me get there. How do you guys feel about pocket aces? You love them, or do they scare you? There's a button straddle of 25, and I raised to $75. The hijack calls. The button re-raises to $275. As he was deciding to raise, I thought about my options, and I had already decided I was going to flat pocket aces in this spot. We go 3 ways to the flop, which I'm totally okay with. It's a jack high flop. There's a flush draw, a couple straight draws, but I feel pretty good about my aces in this spot. We both check over to the button, who bets 400. I think the best option here is to just call. Maybe we're gonna mess this up like we did our set earlier, but here I go calling again. The hijack calls as well, and now we've got a pretty good pot going on, $2,000. The turn pairs the board. I don't really think this card changes much, and it checks around. The river's a brick. Now it's time to get some value. Hopefully we're up against a hand like ace jack or pocket tens. I tank for a while, make it seem like I'm maybe gonna bet a missed flush draw, and I bet $700. The player on my left seems suspicious of this bet and asks how much it is. He pretty quickly calls and the button folds. I show aces, and both players are pretty shocked to see my hand. I don't know if that means I could have got a lot more value from it, but I'm just glad to be scooping a pot. So we're back to building up a stack. We've got a lot of black chips, which is what we want to be collecting. Let's keep it going. We're going to do something a little bit different in this hand because I'm not in this hand. We're going to discuss and analyze the button's playing of ace-king in this hand. There's a raise to 25 and a call, and the button 3-bets to 100. I like this play. I think you should be 3-betting ace-king pretty often. He flops a pretty good flop. Both players check to him, and he bets 175, which I think is a good bet. Both players call. The turn is a 5, which really only improves gut shots, and the occasional 6-5 and 4-5. But I think most of the time we're actually up against the other kings in the deck, and maybe a hand that was open-ended that turned a pair, and occasionally they are going to have 2 pair. The button bets 400, which is a third of the pot. It seems a little small, but I'm glad he's betting to get value. Both players call, and we're on to a river. The river's a 4. This card doesn't really improve any hand we had beat on the turn. And actually now we've improved to beat 5-6 because we have kings and fours. I definitely think we should be value betting this river. The only question is the sizing. There's 1600 in the pot. I think we can bet this river knowing that if for some reason they raise us, they have a better hand and we can fold. We can't just check behind every time we think someone could possibly have a better hand. So I think 600 is a good bet here. We should bet $600. Let's see what he does. The button snap checks behind and shows ace king. Both players muck their hands. What do you think he should have done? Leave a comment below. Do you think he should have bet the river or checked behind like he did? Alright, let's move right along into me playing hands incorrectly. We have queen 10 suited in the small blind and there's a $75 button straddle. I decided to go ahead and call. Nobody else calls, so we go to the flop heads up. I flop a queen, which is most likely going to be the best hand. I bet $100. And the button calls. The turn's an 8. It gives us a gut shot to go along with our queen. Top pair is probably the best hand here. We should bet again to charge the draws and the weaker hands. I bet 200. Now the button goes into the tank. The button can definitely call this bet with weaker hands. There's plenty of draws out there, but he raises us to 800. This is unfortunate, but I think our hand is too strong to fold. We're gonna have to call and see a river. We have top pair with a gut shot, and there's a diamond draw that's out there that could have been missed. The turn card could give him a combo draw. We could still be ahead. I decided to call the 800 and see the river. Yes, we make a straight. There's no reason to lead out here though. I'm just gonna check. It's over to the button who has to think about what to do. I definitely expect the button to have some bluffs and some value bets that we beat. We're just in that spot again where we just have to check call. He bets 1400, we quickly call, and he shows Jack 10 for a bigger straight. What did I do to deserve this? We jump ahead in the action, and I'm actually running pretty good now. I've gotten back a lot of the money I lost. At this point, I may even be up. I don't remember, but you can see I don't have blacks on my bottom floor of my stack, but I've got many stacks of green. I race pocket 7 to $30. We get 3 callers before the under the gun player who limped originally decides to back race to 130. I don't really believe this story, and even if I did, we're actually deep enough for me to call here and set mine, so I go ahead and call $100. I want to see a flop with pocket 7s. The other players don't want to see a flop with their hand, so we go heads up against the original limp backraiser. The flop is Jack 9-3, which originally doesn't look very good for our hand. But if this guy just has ace king or some other weird garbage hand, we're still ahead. I'm gonna peel one time and make a decision on the turn. He bets 150 and I call. Oh baby, the turn is a 7. This is one of those hands where you go from hoping he has nothing to wishing he has something. Of course, I don't want him to have pocket jacks, but he can have aces or kings, I don't care. He ends up checking, which seems kind of odd. I feel like he either has a good hand here or he has nothing. I end up betting a little bit bigger than most people might bet. I bet 325 and he calls. That's a safe river. If he checks, we're gonna go for value. Sure enough, he checks. He has about 1,000 left in his stack. We're gonna be going for it all. I put out 1,200 in chips, but I'm just putting them all in. He goes in the tank for what might be the longest tank of the night. I don't know what he can be thinking about with this. Any overpair would probably just call. Does he have a hand like 10s? Did he have an ace high hand that he was going to hero with? I'm not sure, but he ends up folding. At this point in the night, I'm running super hot and I've actually got a huge stack in front of me. I'm going to show you guys pictures of that in just a minute, but let's do this hand first. In the small blind with a $50 button straddle, I get pocket kings and raise to 150. The big blind calls and the cutoff calls, but the button folds. We'll go into a flop 3 ways and the pot is already over $500. I'm just like you guys. All I'm thinking about right now is please no ace on the flop. Let's see what happens. We dodged an ace. So we have the overpair, backdoor flush draw. It's a pretty good flop for us, nice and safe. There are some draws. I bet $200. I actually think this bet is too small and we'll talk about that a bit later. The big blind calls and we go to a turn. That is probably one of the safest turns I can see. It's just time to continue betting for value. I bet 200 on the flop, so I decide on the turn here to go with the sizing of $425. If the big blind has a jack, or if he has a flush draw, I do expect him to call here pretty much every time. He doesn't have a super deep stack, but I expect him to call with those hands. He does call and we're gonna see a river. Okay, the river's a 6 and it pairs the board. I'm not really worried about him having a set and making a full house at this point, and I don't think he really has jack 8, so pairing the board doesn't help either of us. I do think if he has a jack, he might call a bet here, and if he has diamonds, he's just gonna fold. He only has 1200 left, so I just put them all in, and he ends up folding. I do think I made a mistake in this hand. I think the flop bet should have been larger, maybe 300, 325, and then on the turn I could have bet 600 to 650, which would have left him with only 900 on the river, and maybe he would call that bet. As you can see from this photo, I'm starting to build a massive stack. I've gone way past getting unstuck, and now I'm actually making real profit. Oh, look at all those black chips. In this hand, we have the dreaded pocket jacks that everybody hates. I don't mind them so much. I'm definitely gonna play them in this spot. There's a $50 button straddle, and we've got a few limpers. We're gonna have to make it a lot, but we're definitely gonna raise. I announced 350. It's a pretty big bet, but with all these limpers, you really gotta punish these guys. The big blind calls 350. The under the gun player folds. And now the middle position player, he wants to see a flop as well. We've got a $1,100 pot pre-flop. We flop 1 over to our pair. It's not a great flop, but it really doesn't scare me that much. They both check to me, as they probably should, and I have to decide if I can c-bet this. I think that I can, so I bet $500. The big blind decides to fold, and it's over to the middle position player. He does tank for a while. And then he eventually calls 500. The turn's a complete brick, but I'm not really sure if I can value bet this hand any longer. MP1 checks. I think for a while on whether or not I can value bet this, and then I check. The river's a 10. MP1 checks. I don't really see what can call me that I beat, so I check. He announces one pair and I show jacks, and he mucks his hand. Maybe I missed a value bet on the river. I'm not really sure. I'm just glad I won the hand. At the end of the night, after all the bad beats and misplayed hands, this is the stack I'm playing. And these are the chips I cashed out. Remember that I bought into the game for $3,000 and added on $2,000 twice. So I was in for a total of $7,000 and I cashed out $13,000 for a $6K win. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. This tells me I should keep making more videos. And please check out my website, razorclothing.com, for poker t-shirts, hats, and hoodies.